Billy Sue, my dad said before I hung up the phone. Now, Billy Sue is and was my grandmother. My grandfather had left me over everything before he passed away in November 2016 from pancreatic cancer. So I had full power of attorney over my grandmother and joint bank accounts. And this is why I was being arrested at the border. I was being accused of stealing from her. After I made the phone call to my dad, before I hung up with him, I said, write this down. They're going to be transporting me to Las Colinas Women's Detention Center. My dad said, just hang tight, babe. I'm going to call a lawyer and we're going to get you out of this. Just call me when you can. So I hung up the phone. I turned it off. And I would have liked to have tried to call my friend. But I knew that he was not in any kind of mood to keep sitting there watching me play on my phone. So I handed him the phone. And he told me that we were going to go back to the back and get some fingerprints. He asked me to stand up. He uncuffed my ankle from the bench. And he asked me to lift up each foot and sort of did a pat down. Like I could have been hiding anything or took anything sitting there cuffed to that steel bench for the past hour. So we go through a steel door and we go down a hall. He uses my fingers and takes the tips and puts them in the ink, rolls my fingers across the fingerprint strip. And when he's finished, I asked if I could wash my hands. And I turned back behind me and there was a sink with some soap. I then asked if it was okay for me to use the restroom because I had no idea how much longer I was going to be there. On our way out, I said, "Sir, could you please get me something to eat? I haven't had anything since early this morning." And by this time it was around 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So as we were walking out, he looked at some officers that were standing back behind a counter and he said, "Get this woman something to eat. She's hungry." He took me back over to the bench, recuffed me, and told me that I would just have to sit tight until I was picked up. That's when I asked him about my glasses. I said, "Is there any way I can get my glasses?" And he said, "Do you really need your glasses?" I said, "Well, they're prescription, and I can't really see anything without them on. And if I keep sitting here squinting, I'm going to end up with a headache." So he kind of looked frustrated with that, but he got them to go through my personal things and get my reading glasses and my glasses. And then he walked away. And I sat back down and got still. And my stomach was just growling. I was shaking on the inside. I was hungry. So I turned to one of the female officers and I said, "Ma'am, could you please get me something to eat?" And she turns her back like she's trying to find something. She's huffing and puffing. She comes from around the back through that steel door and hands me a bag of animal crackers and a Capri Sun to drink, which at that time was just better than nothing. And so I ate that, and I was looking over to my left. There was a Hispanic lady, and she was crying. And I wanted to talk to her. I wanted to talk to anybody because I was so nervous. And I looked over to her, and she just kind of gave me she gave me like a scared look. Another agent came out to try to speak with her and ask, "Do you speak English?" And she was like, "No English." And it's like, "Oh, okay, well, we got to get a translator and then we'll be back." And I just kind of laughed, because again, there's all this news media with Trump talking about all these illegals coming in, and well, then why is there nobody there speaking Spanish? And it was just another thing. So I watched her upset for a while, and then another agent and a translator came and got her and took her back, I guess, for questioning. And I just sit there and I began to get cold. And I felt like I was just demanding so much, but none of my basic needs were being met. I was cold, I didn't have anything to eat, and I had no idea where I was really going. I didn't know anything about the area. Then the Hispanic lady come back out from the back and they did the same thing with her. Made her lift her feet, recuffed her ankle. She sat down and she was, crying. And one of the guards from behind the counter, the same guard, female that had got me my crackers and Capri Sun, just was mocking her. Wah, wah, wah. You fucking baby. Liar. And I just kept antagonizing. And I knew just to sit there and be quiet because I didn't have a fight in any of it. After about 2 hours, two transporting officers came through back from behind the counter. They were wearing name tags. And they said, "You're going to be going with us. So stand up." They uncuffed my ankle and they walked me over to the counter. And we went through the whole process again where I had to place my hands up on the counter while they patted me down. This time I had to put my hands behind my back and was going to be cuffed. But there was no cuff on my ankles. They had taken that one off. There were also two other, I guess, felon fugitives that they were doing the same thing with. Another female and then a male. The officer told me, "You're just going to walk in a straight line. You're going to follow behind the female and don't say anything." So we go down a long hall, we get on an elevator, we go up an elevator, and the door opens, and there's this white transport van sitting out in a sally port. And they told us to get up in the van. So when the door opened and I look inside the van, there's these van seats and all the upholstery, foam, nothing of cushion. And then there's been like a rough texture spray paint. And I'm made to sit in that seat. My arms are behind me, cuffed. The paint's scraping the backs of my hands. And I'm made to sit there. And we were told, "We're going to take this male downtown San Diego to the federal jail. And then we'll take you two women to Las Colinas Women's Detention Center when we're done with him." So as we get to the downtown area, of course, I'm looking around. I remember coming through that same place 6 months prior. And I'm seeing signs that are on billboards. "San Diego welcomes you." And it just made me sad. I mean, there I was, cuffed in a van without being able to get out, without talking to anybody. So the driver is the male. He's backing into the jail downtown and he crashes into a pole. So then we had to wait on a report to be done on the accident. After that was done, he got the male fugitive out of the van and walked him inside. And we were probably waiting there at least another 30 minutes. The female transporter, she's up front just playing on her phone. Nobody's really talking. And we get, we get news that it's probably going to be a while. The traffic's probably going to be really jammed. It was around 6:30. So rush hour traffic out on the interstate. So the mail transporter, he gets in driver's seat and starts driving us. I'm getting hungry again. My arms are going numb. My wrist hurts. My back hurts. I just want to get out. I just want to know what's going on. And we take a lot of turns. And then we pull into like a intercom box in front of this jail. He presses the button. Sir, can we help you? Yes, I have 2 female inmates I'm going to be dropping off. The gate slides open. He drives around to the side. A garage door opens and we go into a sally port where we're asked to get out of the van in our cuffs, and we go through a big door. This time, I was even more nervous than when I got arrested, because I was going into this big facility full of inmates, full of the unknown. I've never had anything like this happen to me. The female officer, or the transport officer, she was leading us through the steel door. And she turned and she said, this is the intake lobby where they're going to start your intake process. I looked ahead. There were 4 glass windows with the nurse sitting on the opposite side. And I looked over to the right. There was like this stand-up x-ray machine. And they uncuffed my wrist, which I was very thankful. It was 6:26 on February 19, 2020, when I walked into that detention center, which is another name for jail. And I had been cuffed for 7 hours. I looked across the lobby, and the nurse, Weeks, she motioned for me to come sit down in this green, dirty chair and face her. She asked me a few medical questions, asked me if I was pregnant. I said, well, no, I'm not pregnant. I haven't had sex with a man in over 20 years. She said, well, I'm still going to need a urine sample. This is standard procedure. So she comes out, hands me the cup, walks me over to a restroom. And I go inside, and I knew it was going to be just damn near possible to give them a sample. I hadn't had a drop of water in 12 hours. And just besides that little sip of Capri Sun, very little intake, I was able to give them a drop. And I come back out of the bathroom and gave her sample cup. I was motioned by another intake personnel to get in front of this backdrop for my mugshot. Weeks, I'm going to need you to take your glasses off and stand still. And I stood there. She took the picture and she said, now put your glasses back on. And she took another picture. She said, now go ahead and step back over to the nurse's station at the 3rd window. So I'm walking off in humiliation, and I sit down. And she said, well, Weeks, you're not pregnant. She took a few more vitals and then motioned for me to go over to an x-ray machine to be scanned. And as I was being scanned, there was a video playing on this overhead monitor about sneaking in drugs and showing somebody ODing in a jail cell, and they were carrying them out on the stretcher. It was just so disturbing. When she finished, she told me I could put my shoes back on. And the transporting officer was standing there with all my personal belongings, and he was putting them in a new bag. And it was really hard for me to stand there and look at my wallet, my passport, my Ray-Ban sunglasses, and my phone. And he said, "Ma'am, I'm going to give you a chance to turn your phone on and write down some numbers that you need." Well, I didn't have a pen, I didn't have a paper. I said, "What am I supposed to write on?" He said, "Your arm." He said, "I'm telling you, you're gonna be glad you did this, because you're not gonna know when you're gonna see your phone again." So I grabbed his pen, or he let me borrow it, and I wrote my dad's number on my forearm and my friend's number on my forearm, who had been with me when I was arrested at the border. And I thanked him for allowing me to do that. He didn't have to. He put all my stuff in a new bag from Las Colinas and sealed it up, and then walked me toward another steel door. When the steel door opened, I was handed over to a corrections officer, and she told me to hold my arm out, my right arm, and she put this wristband around my wrist, and it had my mugshot picture, it had my birth date, and it had my booking number. And she said, "I'm going to have you step over here and get some fingerprints." So it was more fingerprints. And after taking my fingerprints, the officer said, "Go on over into the booking area." And we followed the officer into a dressing area, had 4 open stalls, had a couple of racks, a stack of blues, stack of bras, sports bras, panties, socks, and flip-flops. She had us go into the stall individually and with the curtain open and strip down. She handed me a paper sack. She said, "When you get all your clothes off, put them in this sack." And I stood there just looking at that sack and just thinking that less than 12 hours prior, I had put on those clothes with the idea that I was going to be crossing over into California and going to spend some time with the new friends that I had met at this women's riding retreat in Mexico. And then there I was standing in a stall, completely naked, hungry, cold, scared, and a female officer power staring at me and my body and ordering me she said, "Run your fingers through your head, your hair, pull back your ears, open your mouth, run your fingers through your gums. Now hold up your breast, hold up your stomach. Now I need you to turn around. I'm going to need you to bend over, spread your ass, spread your vagina, and cough 3 times." The tears streamed down my face. And I just stood there, numb, feeling as though I was being raped. My soul had just left my body. I was just standing there so disassociated. And I couldn't look at her face. In the same way I have never been able to look at somebody's face who's sexually assaulted me. It was the same thing. It's the same fucking thing. I don't care how you look at it. I dried up my tears. I went to put on these panties, and in the crotch, they were brown period stains. And that's what I was putting on my body, a used pair of fucking panties that somebody had bled in, a dirty sports bra, some rough textured socks, blue pants, a blue shirt that said San Diego County Jail on the back. And then she asked me, what size shoes do I wear? And she handed me a pair of orange transparent flip-flops. We were told to line up one by one, and as we passed a cart, we were told to grab 3 blankets, a hand towel, and a gown, and not to talk. We walked outside. It was dark. We were on a concrete path, and I just wanted to find out what was going on. And we started walking. It was about me and 20 other inmates, and we're walking, and you can just hear the sound of the flip-flops going against the concrete path until we get to another dorm, which they call the housing dorm or the holding cells, or it's where you go when you're just being held until someone signs your bond or until you see the judge in the next day or two to get a bond hearing. This is where you go. And we get to this dorm, and the officer opens the door and has us walk in one by one. And as she's holding the door, there's other officers in front making sure that we're coming in.